Morning, everybody. How are we? Very quiet by the sound of things. Hungover. Good. Me too. No, I was very sensible last night. I'm very excited to be here, not least because I get to share some time with some great people, but also this is my first Postback. So Peter reminded me yesterday he's taking my Postback virginity, which seemed a bit weird, but nonetheless, I'm very, very glad to be here. I've flown 10,000 miles to do a 15-minute talk, so I should really hurry up because I've got 14 minutes left. And I'm here to talk to you about mobile first, not mobile only. I recognise quite a few people at this event, but if you haven't met me, I run Fetch. I launched it 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, it was reasonably straightforward for me to sound like the smartest mobile marketer in the room. And that was because I was the only mobile marketer in the room 7 years ago. And so when I started thinking about doing this talk, I thought, it's going to be a bit more difficult standing in front of hundreds of the greatest minds in mobile and trying to sound smart. And then I thought about talking about singularity, and I quickly scratched it off the list too. But it really made me think, mobile's moved on quite a bit in 7 years. It's moved on quite a bit in 2 years. And we're all in an industry now that I think has... we talked yesterday, Peter mentioned the year of mobile. I try not to say those words, but we are in that tipping point in mobile where it's not the smaller brother of marketing. It's not the marketing channel which is exclusive for mobile first or mobile only businesses. It's now being really well respected, and people in this room have been part of that growth, which is really exciting. But I sort of asked myself, why is that? And yes, we've talked a little bit about mobile marketing being reasonably frictionless. That's true. Yes, we talk about accountability. Companies like Tune have allowed us to measure, the performance of mobile. But the reality is, mobile has arrived because we've reached scale. We've reached scale because consumers, all of us and the rest of the world, are using their mobile more than ever before. And so I like to think of the world now of being slightly different. Life has changed. The way that we live our life is slightly different to how it was 5 years ago and incredibly different to 10 years ago, and that's through the power of mobile technology. Jay Wise this morning was talking about us as consumers being demanding. We are a lot more demanding. We are, from a mobile perspective at least, we're optimizing our life through mobile. We want things now. So life has changed. Everything has changed. If you think about the way you consume your news, if you think about the way you watch TV, or at least consume TV content or films, if you think about the way that you talk to your family and your friends, everything's just that little bit different. My WhatsApp, I've had to turn the notifications off on WhatsApp because I'm constantly getting messages and pictures from my mum on her latest vacation. That's just a little bit different to what it was 5 years ago. If you think about the way you listen to music, the way you travel, not just take cars, thank God we don't have to talk to strangers in bars anymore. You've got Tinder, you've got Happen, you've got all these other wonderful dating apps Micah Gantman keeps telling me about. So the world's changed. And the stat that we've been using for a while is that we look at our phone 144 times a day. I think it was mentioned this morning that it might be 200 times. That's quite a lot, right? It's quite a lot to, be looking down at your phone 144 times a day. And I'm preaching to the converted here, of course. But when you think about these 144 moments, how many of those moments are commercial message opportunities? We're all marketers. We're all here to sell our products, to drive app installs, to sell more hotel rooms or more car rides or whatever it might be. And we need to advertise to new customers or existing customers to drive a benefit to our business. So you need commercial message opportunities. You need to advertise. And when you think about mobile behavior, these 144 moments, how many of those allow for commercial message opportunities? Well, it's a really personal device. We're checking bank balances, we're sending emails, we're taking photos. As advertisers, we realize that we can't advertise, we can't get a commercial message opportunity in those environments. And as consumers, we're very happy about that. Traditional marketers, even back to the Mad Men era, will always talk about 3,000 commercial message opportunities in any given day. So from the moment you wake up in the morning through to the moment you go to bed at night, there are arguably, give or take, about 3,000 opportunities to get a commercial message in front of somebody. So if you weigh that up to 144 mobile moments versus 3,000 real moments, I think we need to ask ourselves as an industry, certainly from the advertiser's perspective, are we leaving a lot of opportunity on the table if we're focusing purely on mobile marketing for mobile-first businesses? Please don't ask me what's second, because that's been asked to me a few times, and that does throw me, that question. But mobile-first has lots of different interpretations. From a Fetch perspective, we've been on an evolution from a mobile-only agency to a mobile-first agency. And that, for us, is taking the limitations away from mobile to help our mobile-first customers market themselves in an integrated fashion. So what does mobile-first look like from a marketing perspective? An onion. That's what it looks like to me. It's a way of looking at paid, owned, and earned media in a controlled fashion, and you start with what you can control most, which is your product, your app. Most of the advertisers in the room and at this event have some sort of application. You then look at CRM, App Store presence, ASO, SEO. You look at your social media channels, so you're going through these owned environments which you can control. They're relatively cost efficient. You then look at PR, ratings, reviews, and then you get to that point where you go, we really need to start advertising now. So we look at app advertising, or we call it mobile advertising. This is where we start looking at paid social. We start looking at programmatic. We start working with all the partners we've got in this room, from ad networks through to whatever it might be from a mobile advertising perspective. But then you need to start tapping into the 3,000 moments, right? Then you need to start thinking about out-of-home, TV, and so on. And so we enter the world of traditional media. And I'm sure most of you coming to a mobile marketing event are wondering why you're listening to somebody talk about traditional media. And the thing with traditional media is if you approach it in a traditional way, you're going to have a real challenge. And we learnt this at Fetch because, I'm going to be honest with you, the consumer's moved a lot in the last 7 years, but traditional media really hasn't. It's quite archaic. And a typical planning model is you take 100% of a budget, you split it into 70-20-10. 70% goes into what typically works more often than not, TV, 20% goes into digital, 10% goes into innovation. It's really hard to measure, it's expensive, it's fraught with challenges to make it work for mobile-first companies. So we've been on a journey to figure out if we can disrupt the way that you buy traditional media so that it backs out for growth marketing for mobile marketers. And the good news is it does. But you need to have a really different approach. And the first thing is, you need to have a data-first approach to traditional media, right? So if you go to a traditional agency or whoever would buy your media campaign, they typically go data last. So they'll do a bit of insight to when they plan your campaign. They'll then book it and traffic the campaign. And then you'll get a summary report at the end, which tells you how well your campaign did or didn't do. And that's a really data-last approach. What we found is you need to have data from the very moment you start planning your campaign. You need to have mobile consumer data in any given location. So Fetch is our own proprietary Fetch Me platform where we can get that data from, but there's other tools in the market which can help you with that. We have a notion of thinking about everyone, not everyone. So it's thinking about what partners with traditional formats can I trade first-party data with, use IDs so that I can target individuals with certain messaging, with certain targeting, as opposed to having a really carte blanche broadcast approach. And then you really need to dig into the data of the audience. People are talking about TV being the biggest, growing more than ever. It's having its highest viewership of all time. But when you dig underneath the hood, actually, yeah, we are watching the big TV screen in our room, in our living room, but the growth is coming from on demand. Traditional broadcast TV is actually in decline. So it's really understanding the nuances of where traditional media is today, and and looking at it from a different perspective, a data-first perspective. We need to minimize risk. As growth marketers, we want to see return on ad spend. And for traditional marketing, we're in an industry where upfronts are a big thing. You have to bid for months ahead, or even for a whole year, and commit to a certain amount of advertising for TV or out of home, whatever it might be. When you create TV commercials, people want to do big cinematographic, amazing ads. And they're $1 million plus, 5 million sometimes. So that doesn't work, particularly when you're putting your toe in the water and learning how to use all these new platforms to drive new users or better value from your users. So firstly, it doesn't cost $1 million to create a piece of video content. We know that. There's much more affordable ways of shooting various commercials of different lengths. You can then variant test that and understand what you're going to invest into more to then put it onto larger platforms. And you need to really think and work with these new suppliers or traditional suppliers to change the way that you trade. Upfronts don't work, so you have to build in cancel orders. We are part of Dentsu Aegis Network. They're the third largest buyer of any advertising in the world. So we have a little bit of leverage there where we can do that. But traditional media companies are looking for new customers, and they are willing to have open conversations about new trading models. Measurement. Everybody says, well, you can't measure traditional media. You don't have a silver bullet like you do in other platforms, but there are ways of making it work. So if you think about TV, you can spot match. You need to work with guys like Tune to get the right raw log level data from you, from the platform, sorry. You've got time and date stamps you can use to look at actually what individual TV spot is working. If you're running out of home, you can look at lat longs and figure out, okay, what site is driving the most installs? So there are certain models you can start working with to really get a live interpretation of how your campaigns are working. And that's really important because without that, you can't optimize. And we all know that if we don't optimize our marketing, it just doesn't work. I mean, mobile's difficult because you've got to continuously optimize, and that's when you get your goal. But when you start looking at these TV spots and you're tweaking them, when you start figuring out what bus shelters or big sick sheets are working from an out-of-home perspective, or what radio ads are working, and you start tweaking them, then you start to see some really interesting cross-platform results. And there's a reason why you're seeing Supercell and Machine Zone, these types of businesses move into this platform because the results are quite compelling if you get it right and if you can measure and optimize. So, the old world of advertising and the new world, us, I think would be fair to say, of advertising, are coming together and colliding a bit. And so I think it's a really interesting period in marketing generally because we can take what we've learned, the rigor, the measurement, the data-led focus of marketing our businesses, and apply that to the old world where, is the real world. It's the 3,000 moments out there. So I think it's a really interesting time. I'm not suggesting that everybody in the room go off and spend all their money on TV, because I don't think that's good for anybody in this room. But it's definitely worth thinking about. There is an opportunity to grow. People are talking about the app economy slowing. There's definitely more demand for inventory. And so I think we need to start looking up at the opportunity of real-world advertising and taking a leap of faith. Thanks very much.